Welcome, everybody, to the Gifts of God program, Sunday Talk. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm also getting clearer about fear. And what is it? Why is it? What's our responsibility around it? What is the Holy Spirit's function in helping us undo our fear? And how does that work? So I think, last week I talked a bit about fear, but I think we still need to stay on this because it's a section, these couple of sections in chapter 2, fear and conflict. And then the next section is cause and effect. And then the last section we read this morning, I haven't sent out the podcast yet, but it was something about the function of the last judgment or something like that. And all those words kind of are associated with fear. Well, the first little bump in the road that Sandra and I encountered that we had to talk about was in this section on fear and conflict, where Jesus said, I can't help you get over, I can't take away your fear, basically, he was saying. I can't take away your fear because you made it up. You made up the fear. I don't have the fear. I don't even see the fear as real. You made up the fear with certain conditions, and the conditions are always thoughts, right? The thoughts that form different conditions in your life. And then those conditions make up what you're afraid of, right? And he said, well, you made all that stuff up. So you're the one that has to face it and undo it. Basically, he said, well, I can help you do that, but not until you see that you are the one that made the fear. You're totally responsible for the fear. And then once you see that, then I can help you undo it with the atonement. So the atonement is like total forgiveness, right? So if we make a mistake and we're not even aware we made a mistake, and then we create this condition in our life with a thought of fear, right? And then we're kind of obsessed with that, and we can't really jump into happiness as long as we're in fear. So that is something we did. Now the atonement is like once you see that. And I think in a former section, it talked about the altar. The altar is your relationship with life, with God, with yourself. That's the altar. That's the inner altar. And it says, well, as long as you have fear, as long as you have these things going on, conflict, fear, blah, 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 he comes right out and says, your altar has been defiled. Because the true nature of the altar, the inner being, right? The inner relationship you have with yourself, your creator, your people in your life, the essence of that altar is perfect peace, is perfect love, is perfect harmony, is everything is flowing, everything's working, everything's kind of happy. It's basically your heaven on earth, your altar is your heaven on earth. Well, if you're not experiencing that heaven on earth and you got problems and you got conflicts and you've got fears, well, then he says your altar is defiled, meaning it's not in a state of order. That's all that means. It just means you put stuff on the altar that shouldn't be there, and it's causing you fear and anxiety and anger and, upset and guilt and, all those mental demons that we've all experienced, right? We've put that in the altar, on the altar, and it shouldn't be there. And it's our responsibility to begin the process of removing those things from the altar. And the good news is it doesn't have to take a lot of time. So we think, well, it takes time to, correct some of these things in ourselves and in our life and switch things around. And he says, no, all you need to do is see that you screwed it up. You defiled your altar, unbeknownst maybe to you, or beknownst to you. It could be conscious or unconscious things you did, and willy-nilly, you've arrived in this place that's messed up, right? All right, and you see that, and you feel that, and you're living that in your everyday life. All right, well, what's the next step? Okay, you see that you did it, and then it says, you look immediately to the atonement. So this is where miracles come in, because our conscious mind, our kind of, mind of living in the world thinks that, oh, if you make a big problem and it took a long time to make that big problem, it's going to take equal amount of time to kind of dismantle it, unravel it, unsolve it, right? Well, maybe that's the ego wanting to solve the ego. It's the ego is time. It takes time to screw up, and it takes time to, quote, fix things. And then usually our fixes don't really fix it. They might fix part of it, but then they create a couple more problems along the way. So it's like a fix that never really gets fixed. But now the atonement is the perfect solution. And that is not in time. It doesn't take time to accept the atonement. It's like what the Course would call a holy instant. It's like now, oh, okay, I see I was the one that made up these conditions, right? I was the one that did that with my thoughts, with my actions, with my words. Now, so because I made it up, I'm also responsible for correcting it. And well, how do you correct it? Well, first step is it says, look immediately to the atonement, well, which is, I forgive myself for making those mistakes. It's like even though I made a mistake, I completely love and accept myself. That's the one affirmation is worth $1 million. I've told it to you before, but you should get it kind of, seared in your memory. Anytime you make a mistake, you look immediately towards the love, the forgiveness that's going to correct it. But now you can't be in blame. You can't be in victim consciousness. You can't be in, oh, this happened because somebody else did X, Y, and Z to me. That's going to block it. And that's why Jesus says, I can't help you remove the fear until you take the responsibility. Now, Sandra had a little bit of a glitch on that when she read that, and she said, well, now I feel kind of like I'm alone and I don't have help, and I'm out here on my own trying to correct all this stuff. It's not exactly like that. It's like we make a mistake and the divine forces are present. They witness us making that mistake. It doesn't mean they're not there, but it does mean they're not going to interfere. Those forces will not interfere with our free will. And then that's what this next section, after it talks about fear and conflict and how Jesus says it's your responsibility to correct your fear. Right after that, it's cause and effect. And then he says why he won't interfere and take the fear away from you. It's because that would interfere with the basic law of cause and effect. You have free will to think whatever you want to think. Now, you can think thoughts separated from your source, which produce fear, or you can think thoughts unified with your source, which is going to produce love, peace, joy, all the good stuff, right? And that's your free will. So if he came in there and removed all your trash, without you taking an action. It's like, oh, save me, God. We all have thought that at some point in our troubles. That would be interfering with cause and effect, because you haven't undone the misperceptions, the cause of your problems and your fear. That's your responsibility. And that's what the Christ is saying. The first step has to be yours. You have to, one, admit I made a mistake, see that I made these results, and be willing to do something about it by changing the thoughts that produce the fear. And it's always at the mind level. That's the other thing Jesus says is, don't try to correct the problem at the behavior level or the physical level. You have to correct the problem in the mind level, because it's the mind that it's the thoughts that give you that behavior, or give you that physical action, or give you that manifestation in the world. So the correction has to happen in the mind. But what we often make the mistake of is we think, oh, if we just rearrange certain things out there in our physical world, we're going to solve the problem. Take another pill, take another, loan out from the bank, whatever it is. I don't like this relationship, I'm going to get a new one. So we try to shift things out there, and then we realize, oh, we're just dragging the same kind of a relationship with problems with us, right? So we're trying to correct it externally, but he's saying, no, the correction has to happen at the mind level. You have to see the thoughts that produced the things, the conditions that gave you the fear in the first place, right? That's where you have to make the correction. And he says, well, I can help you do that, but first you have to see it's your responsibility, and then you accept this atonement, this forgiveness. And in that atonement, those thoughts are turned around. Somewhere, I forget the number of the lesson, it says, forgiveness is the only gift I give. Yeah, forgiveness is the only gift I give. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness offers everything I want. There's a lot of lessons in the workbook on forgiveness as being the ultimate focus of your waking day, and I think that's a little hard for people to get, that everything they do has this vigilance of forgiveness in it. I remember studying with Haleakala on this Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness process. And basically he was saying, we only came here to clean things up and forgive. That's why we took an incarnation. So, unless you're Jesus and Babaji already and you incarnate to help humanity, you got something to clear. And that's why you incarnated, to do that clearing on family, relatives, ancestors, wives, ex-wives, kids, all that, all your relationships in life, those are coming to you because you have, psychic, karmic attachments with them that are not totally clear. And you're coming in this life to forgive and cut those attachments and be free. So that's the purpose of your life, is to liberate yourself from these defilements on your altar, right? and that's a noble job, but it's also a job we don't often see the joy in that. We think that's putting our face in our mistakes, and not really. It's like putting our attention to the freedom that we receive when we do the work. And that work is the forgiveness. That work is seeing inside, what I need to let go of, what I need to change, what I need to correct in myself. And then at some point, Tara Singh called that a love of correction. You have to develop a love of correction. So when things go a little bit pear-shaped, you don't let them get too far off track. And you say, whoa, that's going a little bit the wrong way. I better work on that. I better look inside, see where I'm contributing to that, and correct it before it gets to the next stage of being out of hand. So it's kind of a mental discipline. Yeah. And the mental discipline is it's not a hard discipline, but it does take commitment. And all that is just observing your mind, just being aware of what is going on in there, right? And that's natural. I listened to this thing on Krishnamurti talking about meditation, and he said, you would just be beguiled by all the techniques of meditation that are out there. Sit a certain way, put your body in this position, only show up at certain times a day, all these rules and regulations of what meditation should be or could be. And he said, none of that means anything. It's all just the ego making up something that might preoccupy you, but it doesn't really change anything. So he said, well, meditation is as natural as living. It's like, a tree is in meditation all the time, and it doesn't have anything particular that it's doing other than being its own nature. So we have our own nature, and we have a mind, and we have a consciousness, and we can use that and be aware of what that is. And that's natural. And this kind of self-introspection, when you turn around and instead of looking out, you're looking in, then as soon as you do that, that's natural, and that's meditation. And it's simple. It's just being aware of your thoughts. And you don't have to go off and do Vipassana for a week and be silent. And now you can do that. But I think we're in an era where that's not necessary. It's just in our daily life, be aware of your thoughts. It's as simple as that. Be aware of when things go off, what is the correction? When you're feeling fear, what are the conditions that are causing that fear in you? What are those fears? What are the conditions that are causing those fears? And deal with those conditions. And it's a simple process. It's not complicated. And if you just took 5 minutes to, like, if you're feeling the fear and you just ask yourself a simple question, okay, so the main thing I'm afraid of now is, and see what comes up. What are those conditions that are giving you the fear? And then you can turn those around. So like I would say to myself, let's see, the main thing I'm afraid of now and going to the Middle East is we won't have our hotel rooms booked in time, and I don't know where we're going to stay. Well, okay, so I suppose I could do a little bit of communication this week and get that clear. Another fear I have about being in the Middle East is that they won't like me talking about Jesus in A Course in Miracles because they're very committed to Islam. Well, I've been trying to immerse myself in Islam and get to know a little bit more about it. I know they have these 99 names of Allah, that they hold real near and dear. And I've been sort of looking at those and seeing when I read the description of each name, it's very much like the Divine Mother names. You know, they're all very lofty principles of mercy and grace and love and forgiveness. So I think essentially, you know, the essence of what's at the root of their faith is the same as any other religion that's trying to get you connected to those higher frequencies. So I don't think I have to be afraid of presenting the Course in Miracles in that context of Islam, because I think some of the principles are the same. You know, I just have to make that clear in my delivery, that it's not different other than the form. It's not different in content. I mean, basically, the Course, if you boiled it down, it's trying to liberate us from fear and put us into love, right? It's trying to liberate us from conflict and put us into peace. So those items can always be talked about in any context. And I think that's what we have to keep in our own mind about our own life. Like, are we moving closer to love, or are we moving closer to fear? You know, the ego's version of doing things in the world has a lot of fear. The Holy Spirit's version of doing things in the world has a lot of love, giving, extending. So we have to decide which direction we're going to go. We all think we want to go the route of love, but then we notice we're kind of looking over our shoulder and wondering what dog's going to bite us next, you know? And I don't think that's God's plan for us. You know, we have to be ahead of the game. We have to be in the creative flow. We have to be in the extension of that abundance of life, abundance of love. You know, on this section in the cause and effect, it said, the only cause is God, and the only effect is God's Son, of which we were all one, right? And then later on, it corrects it, the thing where it says about Jesus being God's only Son. He corrects that right away and says, no, where it says, I gave my only begotten Son to the rest of humanity, meaning Jesus sacrificed himself for us. He corrects that. And he says, no, I gave love to my Son, meaning everybody. It's like I gave it to Jesus, but I also gave it to everybody. And you are the sonship. You know, Jesus is an older brother. He's the one that played the part perfectly. You know, he's the yo-yo ma on the cello. And he all of us other little cello players who are aspiring to be that perfect, you know, and he showed us the way to do it. So it's just simple like that. He's a teacher who is perfected, totally liberated, totally enlightened, right? Which is our potential. We all have that potential to be that, but we need a guide, we need a teacher, we need a master cello player to, you know, help us get there. So I think that he clears that up in the cause and effect section. And I think it's important to see that. And when he said, oh, God is the only cause and the Son is the only effect, and the result of that is love, okay? That everything that the God produces, everything that the Son produces is love. Now, on the separated version, it's like we think we made ourselves, right? We think we're the cause, and then all of our results are the effects. And our effects usually have a good portion of hell involved there, a good portion of conflict, problems, pain, sufferings, fears. That's what we made up. So really the Course in Miracles is like distilled down to one decision. Are we going to be the self God made, or are we going to be the self God created, or are we going to be the self God made? I'm sorry, let me nix that. Let me say it again. Are we going to be the self God created, or are we going to be the self we made up? And that's the crux of the problem. And that's where people have unwillingness to let go, because we spent a whole lifetime making up the self. It's got some good qualities. It's got some little devious qualities. It's got some, happiness. It's got some sorrow. It's got some pains. It's got some joys. And it's something that we made up. And we know we have autonomy over that. And we think that, okay, now Jesus asked me to let go of that for this higher self that I'm not so in touch with. And it feels like something's getting ripped away from us. And so we have unwillingness. And we think, well, we're going into this space that I'm not so sure of. It's like a space of the unknown. So why would I give up what I know, even if it contains all of my inconsistencies and things that I don't like? At least it's something I've got control of. Well, we have to see it higher than that, like free will doesn't mean that you're going to be asked to do something that's not also your will. Like it said, doing the will of God, at some point you realize the will of God is your true will too. So your will and God's will become kind of melded together, right? And then it's interesting. It's very important too that you read this last section in this chapter about the last judgment, because that is where a lot of our fear comes in making this shift into our higher self. We're stuck on this notion that when we get kind of in front of God, there's going to be this retribution that we have to pay for all of our mistakes, right? And we don't want to go there. We don't want to go to that self God created because we're afraid that we're going to be held accountable for all of our crap, right? And so we don't make that leap. But see, I think we have to see that in a very subtle way, much differently. So what does it mean to accept this higher self? Like, let's just say we accept the atonement for ourselves, really, wholly, completely. What does that mean when we accept the atonement for ourselves? Well, it means that this self you made up, this lower self that you spent a whole lifetime constructing and manufacturing and perfecting and imperfecting, that self kind of disappears. It kind of like dissolves, right? And then this self that you're moving into takes shape, takes manifestation, takes form, takes reality, right? So you're not really being deprived of anything. You're not really letting go of anything that's real. You're just saying, oh, all those dreams, all those bad dreams that I experienced in this in this self down here, I wake up. and they're not there anymore. And that's the nature of a dream. When you're in it, you think it's real. But when you wake up, you say, wow, I'm so glad that that was a dream and I'm awake now. So that's kind of how you're going to feel going into this state of the higher self. It's like all this self that you thought was so real in all its fears and all its problems and all its, projections. It's just gonna it's like you relax and it just kind of dissolves. And then what you retain from that, I mean, we all have a personality, and as long as we're in a body, we have a personality, right? So it's like almost impossible to not have an ego living in the body, because you need your ego to drive your car and, all that stuff, balance your checkbook and all that stuff. Well, all those things that you have to do at that level are going to be blessed. The Course would call it, now you're in the happy dream. You're in the happy dream. You're not going to make up conflicts at that level, because that's just the functional tool of being in the world. That level is just my communication device. It's my tool for being here. And it's a wonderful tool. It's a healthy tool. It's a useful tool for communicating the joy that I reach in this higher place, right? So when you make the leap, okay, now you're in joy, and you see that any conflict is, I made it up and I can let it go. And you don't even create conflicts anymore. You don't even make up conflicts, because you know not to go there. And if you do, you forgive them immediately and dissolve them. It's like you get more adept at not allowing those conditions and thoughts in your mind that would produce conflict and pain and suffering. You get more adept at that. You don't allow those thoughts to enter. You're like I think I used the word forgiveness ninja. Yeah, I like that. You're a forgiveness ninja. It's like before those things even get in there, it's like you and don't even let them go in your mind. You're that adept at watching and being in your higher vibration, right? Joy is the vibration. If you experience enough joy consistently, you won't want to go back down the mountain. There's this beautiful poem by Rumi, I remember, and he's talking about this mountain goat or mountain sheep or something. And this mountain sheep kind of wanders away from the herd, and he's going higher and higher up on the mountain. And then he finds this meadow that is like this sweet grass that only grows at a certain altitude, way high up, right? So he's left the herd down in the lower region, right, or on the plain, and now he's kind of going up the mountain, and he chances upon this meadow of this sweet grass. And he's just in bliss, eating this sweet grass, and just like, it's just so lovely. And it's summertime, right? So he's up in the meadow in the summer, he's just in bliss. And he stays there for, I don't know, a couple months. And then the winter starts setting in, and he knows, oh, I got to go back down the mountain, because the winter's setting in, and yeah, I've got to go back down now. I've had my time up here. Well, so now he goes back down and he has to join the herd again, right? And he's like miserable. He says, this grass down here, it's so horrible. And it's like these people, these other sheep, they're just putting up with dross, they don't even know what the sweet grass tastes like. They don't even know what that freedom, what that sweetness tastes like, right? And now I got to live down here with all of this. I don't have my sweet grass. Well, that's kind of how it is when we get those moments of freedom, of liberation, of pure joy come to us from doing this work. And then we got to go out in the world with the people that have never tasted that sweet grass. It's like a challenge, it's a bit of a dance, it's a bit of a, like, how can I retain the joy of that within the context where people have no idea what I'm talking about? And I think we all have that challenge. And if you want to call it, that's the teaching, that's the service to humanity, that's the mission that we're on, is to liberate ourselves to these higher levels. But also, you got to be willing to go back down the mountain and share what you received. I mean, like, think about it, really. A lot of these holy masters, they live in the etheric plane, in total bliss, total happiness for eons, right? And then all of a sudden they look down there and they say, well, humanity needs a little help. I better go down. And it's not all that easy to go down, right? And so they come down and they impart their joy, they impart their teaching, their way of liberation. And if they didn't, we would have no roadmap whatsoever. And so that's kind of how it is. Like, think if there wasn't Dr. Schucman taking that dictation. And she probably didn't even for herself have to come down. Well, okay, I'll come down, I'll take this down, and then it'll be shared with all of humanity. There are very few Dr. Schucmans, very few Marys, very few Ammas. So that's what we're looking at. But we're also asking ourselves, what is our role in that work? Because we obviously have a role, or we wouldn't be studying the Course in Miracles. It wouldn't have come to us in this lifetime. We wouldn't even have known it existed. But we do, and therefore we do have a role of some kind in this lifting up of humanity. One of the paragraphs, I forget, in one of these last sections, it was talking about this issue. It was saying, you can't totally be free until the rest of your brothers are free too. And that seems like that would take a long time, to liberate there's 7.5 billion people on the planet now. That's a big job. But it says, well, once you get it and then you join with others who are getting it, it creates it cuts time. And you can't imagine the positive impact that will have. It's like it seems like it'll take thousands of years, but it doesn't have to. And we just have to worry about one person, and that's ourselves. Are we free of attack thoughts? Are we free of grievances? Are we fearless? Have we let go completely? Those are the only questions we have to ask ourselves. And don't worry about other people. Just worry about you. How are you applying? How are you applying the lesson, the truth, the direction?
I don't know that.
Well, Alexa doesn't know it either. So, Yeah, I don't know that. Well, Alexa, you didn't get it, did you? Well, she's speaking for all of us. I don't know that. Yeah, that's funny. Well, that's
She
our,
needs a session.
yeah, that's our subconscious talking. Oh, I don't know that. I'm not
She
there.
needs a session.
Yeah. Well, don't ever give up. And my years with Tara Singh, he would never pat you on the back. Not once. And say, oh, you're doing great. Keep going. No, he kept pointing out how you're deceiving yourself, how you're not getting it, how you're resistant, how you're unwilling, and at some point I felt depressed about it, there were people at the foundation who just told me kind of in private, it just got so bad. I just felt like committing suicide. It was so impossible for you to feel like you were progressing. Yeah. But he was doing that intentionally. And because the ego is so stubborn and the ego wants to be like self-aggrandized, the ego wants acknowledgement. And when you get to a certain level, Babaji said, be not concerned with praise or abuse. Well, what does that mean? That means you've transcended duality. You've transcended the need to be patted on the back. You've transcended the guilt you feel when you see you've made a mistake or somebody points it out to you how off you've been. You don't have guilt about that. You just correct it. And you don't need this kind of bells and whistles to go off that, oh, I'm going in the right way. No, you have that inner strength, that inner commitment that you're going to stay with it no matter what. And you don't care what it looks like. And you're going the right direction. And I think that's and you have the Course in Miracles. What greater thing could we have to give us inner wisdom, right? So with all those things in place, what me worry? Alfred E. Newman, Mad Magazine. You remember Mad Magazine, right, David? Alfred E. Newman, Spy versus Spy. Oh, such a great thing. What me worry? You don't have any worries. You are who you are, and you're evolving, and your values are in the right place, and you don't have to worry about it. And if the teacher throws a wet towel at you, okay, fine. I'm so glad I have a teacher to throw a wet towel at me. How many people don't even have a teacher? And they're utterly lost. Would have no idea where to begin. So I feel grateful that he never really patted me on the back, but he never ignored me either. And he was always getting me to take another step. Okay, come to Mexico with me. Oh, okay, let's go to India. Okay, let's go to Europe and see my family. It's like he automatically included me in that dance, whatever that was, and whatever I needed at the moment, And so that's the greatest gift. And I reached a point where I didn't need acknowledgement. And I was not concerned with praise or abuse, because sometimes it did feel a little bit like abuse, right? I had to take a hit, and it didn't feel so good at the time, but now I see maybe that hit liberated me from 50 lifetimes of making the same mistake, you know? And that was true grace. So that's the way it is with the Course. Sometimes it'll be brutally honest and say, well, you still have not let go of this way of being that is basically your ego leading you to death. And it's real clear about it. And it gives us an opportunity to step out. Let go of fear. You know, and it says, well, we all experience fear, but what we're not seeing is the power of the mind that's always creating something. And that the fear is from our own thoughts that we can change. And that's where the change has to take place. And then when we take responsibility for that, and we say, okay, it's me making up the fear. It's these conditions I have projected. I am willing to let them go. I'm willing to accept the atonement for myself for making up these conditions in the first place. Then the Christ is there to help us. But until then, nuh-uh. You can pray to her blue in the face. If you're not taking responsibility, the Christ won't show up. It's like Sandra has this wonderful line in one of the trainings. She says, truth cannot deal with errors you want to keep. If you want to keep your errors, if you want to keep your grievances, attack thoughts, fears, conditions that made the fear, if you want to keep those, nothing that Christ can do, because you have free will, and he would not ever interfere with your free will, because that's basic cause and effect. Basic cause and effect. You have to shift out of the cause of what made the fears, right? Your conditions you made up. You have to shift out of that into where it said God is the only cause and the Son is the only effect, and the result of that is pure joy and heaven on earth. You have to shift from what you made up to that other system. And that's the shift that Jesus says, until you make that, I can't help you. But once you do make that, wow, watch out. You can move mountains. Together we can move mountains, he says. Because you're aligning your thought and that higher plane together. You're connecting with that. Your divine connection is there. You know, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. That's lesson 49, right? God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Well, when you're in that receptivity, you get the guidance and you're listening all the time. And so you're not making big mistakes because you're asking first, should I do this? Should I not do this? What would the Christ want me to do in this situation? You're kind of moving like that, you know? I will step back and let him lead the way. I'm letting the Christ lead the way. I'm in constant communication. God's voice is speaking to me. I'm listening. I'm asking. You know, you got that communication channel open, and that's directing your life. And when you're in that communication, right, or communion, there's truly nothing to fear. You know, people ask us, well, this war going on over there, aren't you afraid of going over there? And didn't they say you shouldn't take flights over there? And I don't know. I didn't even give it a second thought. We planned it. We're going. We got the flights. I figure they're okay. You know, we show up. And the first stop we go in Qatar, some of you know, because you were on the India Quest last time, Miriam and Ali were on the India Quest. There are friends who went with us on the India Quest. So it's going to be like a family reunion. It's not going to be anything other than joy, you know? So, and they've worked hard on this workshop. They've already got quite a few people signed up for it. So that's our first stop. So it's going really well. And yeah. And our beloved Bali in December, talk about heaven on earth. Some of you thought you might come, but then changed your mind. And I encourage you to reconsider. You can still make it because it'll just like plummet you so far forward in your spiritual evolution. Why wait? Why postpone? Well, that's, I think, it for the day. Let me just check here. Yeah, I think we need to be free of fear. Let's dedicate this week to that, okay? I don't know we're starting chapter 3 soon. I don't know what's in it. I haven't even looked ahead to see. But let's commit ourselves this week to really look at this issue of fear and the conditions that we project that bring the fear into us. And let's be willing to let those go, forgive ourselves for making them up, take full responsibility, look at the altar defiled that's got our fear on there and all the conditions we put on there, and start taking them off the altar, right? Accepting this atonement for ourselves. There's no mistake that can't be corrected. Therefore, we have a love of correction. Let's really bring that into application, which is what Tara Singh said. You have to have a love of correction doing this work, because that's what the miracle is. The miracle is a corrective device. Let me put it this way. If you were in heaven, would you need correction? Absolutely not. But we're not in heaven. We're in the hell we made up. And there, correction is needed and miracles are needed to get us back into our divine state of heaven. That's our natural state. So we need the miracles. And, you know, God in his mercy wills that we be saved. The mercy of God gives us the miracles. God doesn't know of hell, right? I created heaven and everything in it, you know, and like silly humans made up some other alternative. I don't know why, but they did. And, you know, call that hell. And they need now an atonement to get them back into heaven. And I gave them that too. So let's just keep it simple and put this as our main goal this week. Let go of the fear, let go of the hell we made up, let go of the problems, because they can come in little irritating ways. You know, when I say hell, I don't mean fires burning and we're stabbing each other with pitchforks, although on some parts of the world, that's what we're doing, i.e. Israel and Gaza. They're doing that right now. And we're making that up. We're making that conflict up. So just ask yourself, what in my mind am I contributing to that conflict? What conflicts do I have in myself that are contributing to that? And let's let go of that this week. Clean that up first. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of us committed to inner peace. And 10 of us are going to send out that to the Middle East, right? I saw these beautiful pictures of a little boy and a little girl this week on Facebook. There were two. There was one real little kids, like maybe 2 years old, and the girl was Jewish and she had her little Star of David on, and the boy was obviously an Arab. He had his, his turban on. And then I saw one a little bit older. They were so sweet. And then they weren't sentimental. A lot of times we can fall into sentimentality that doesn't really do anything. No, these were really heartfelt, And that's the innocence. The innocence of children. They're not programmed with all these belief systems, We're not programmed, in our original state, we're not programmed with all these belief systems and conditions and yeah. Okay. Sandra's giving me a little note. She gives me little notes, So, great. On Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern USA time, we're giving a Breathe for World Peace, and it's free. It's free. I'll send out the link. Some of you have already signed up for it, but I'll send out the link again to the Gifts of God people. It'll probably be I think I might have even sent it out in the WhatsApp group. So you're welcome to come to that. I don't know how many people will show up, but we upped our Zoom participant possibility to 500. So we're looking for a good year this year coming up on some of these group things we do that we can handle 500 people. And I think we're going to make our goal. I really do. I feel this next year, 2024, I'm going to be 69 November 11th, but what I realize, it's my 70th year. Even though I'm 69, I'm in my 70th year, and that's a really great number, 7. It's like freedom. Numerologically, that means freedom. So I have this notion I'm going to have a really good year, or Sandra and I are going to have a really good year, and we feel good about it. And we feel good about the Middle East and going there. We'll keep you posted. So we've got one more weekend at home. So we'll be here again next week for mantra breathing and the talk. And then on Wednesday, we're doing the Peace Breathe. And you're all welcome to come to that.
Tell your friends.
Oh, and tell your friends too. If you can forward that link that I put in the WhatsApp, group to some of your friends, that would be good. And everything's good. Thank you for being here. I love these hours with you. It's like the highlight of my week. Thank you all. I'll have this up on YouTube today sometime, and I'll get it back out there. I listen to them again myself because I need to get it too. It's like it's coming from some other place, but then Marcus Ray needs to get it, So anyhow, I love you guys. God bless you.